Hello, me again. June 10th, 2023. I just found this on the internet. If I sound like I've been crying, I have. Some of this footage and information is new to me yet. And this is the unit my father specifically fought in. He was part of ruffians.
Varsity. The operation's last briefings occurred 2 days before the landing. As dawn broke on March 24th, 1945, British and Canadian troops left the airfields. The Americans rose to the air in transport planes from French airfields just as its allies passed overhead. The airlift comprised 541 aircraft for the paratroopers and 1,050 troop carriers, towing 1,350 glider aircraft. At Montgomery's request, 2,500 feet of smokescreen covered his river crossings. While effective, it also lowered visibility for the airborne component of the plan. The battle started with artillery units bombarding the German positions from the west bank. The first wave of shots was fired at 8:20 a.m., and the second just as the planes flew overhead. The Germans fought back with steady fire as troop carriers approached and turned away from their landing zones. The 507th Parachute Infantry Regiment from the 17th Airborne Division was the first unit to land under the command of Colonel Edson Raff.
Raff's ruffian.
Machine gun and artillery fire rained on them from Deersford Village and its surrounding forest. Colonel Raff sent a party to capture a battery of 150mm guns as he and his troops took control of the forest and the village. They met up with a 1st Battalion unit led by Major Paul Smith near Deersford Castle and together launched an attack on the fortification. The 2nd and 3rd Battalions landed at their drop zones and fought against enemy troops north and east of the zone under cover of the forest.
Those Christmas trees.
Private George J. Peters earned a posthumous Medal of Honor for single-handedly attacking a machine gun nest that interfered with his group's path to their weapons. Schnappenberg was taken by the 9th Parachute Battalion and 1st Canadian Parachute Battalion. However,
The trees that you saw are the same kind of Christmas trees I had growing up, especially with my dad. They're very bare and naked. You needed big ornaments to fill them and big lights, and well, everything in the 70s was big. Remember those old Christmas bulbs that were good and hot? Tinsel. I remember my mom, she had these big giant peacocks, about maybe 4 inches, 5 inches long. And they were all these ornaments were hand painted in Taiwan. This is during the 50s, 60s. Over the years, my mom had gotten more ornaments like we all do. And she had these electric blue satin peacocks with sequins using colored push pins. And then glitter on them. They were beautiful. And they had what we basically call nowadays a roach clip. Those little alligator teeth clamps. The mini ones that you put like electrodes on. And that's how you clipped it onto the tree. And I remember this tree just always looking naked and like a Charlie Brown Christmas tree, you know? Pretty bare. But by the time it was done, with the lights and the tinsel and the ornaments, it looked like the most beautiful, fullest Christmas tree. And every year my father would get those trees. And one day in my late 20s, as I started researching family history and my father's military records, I saw a picture of him. And it clicked. And I knew why he loved those type of trees. And I had no idea that the 507th was the first ones to land. He has a kill list of 24 Krauts and a Fraulein, meaning a woman. Obviously, she wasn't a soldier. Women didn't fight combat in the German army or the American army, but instead did support, except for the Americans when it came to air fighter pilots. They did. You have to look it up. It's true. Wasn't just Rosie the Riveter. But, he had to kill a woman with the knife that they keep on their side boot. Should their gun jam or they lose control of their weapon. Hand-to-hand combat. Now I understand my father a lot more. I can see what he saw. Not all of it. It's enough. You'll see.
Where the Canadian group lost its CO, Lieutenant Colonel Jeff Nicklin. Canadian medical orderly Frederick George Topham earned the Victoria Cross for rescuing wounded soldiers from the field despite being injured himself. The 5th British Parachute Brigade landed at its drop zone, which other groups had struggled with due to poor visibility. They were subjected to heavy German fire, which was later cleared by the 7th Parachute Battalion. The British secured all of their objectives. The 6th Air Landing Brigade arrived under the command of Hugh Bellamy. They came in company-sized groups, capturing multiple objectives, including Humankind. Gliders arrived under anti-aircraft fire, which complicated the landing by increasing the haze and smoke present. Many landed in the wrong area, and some even crashed their planes. Still, most of the gliders made it in, and each of the bridges crossing the River Izzl was captured. Among those who crashed was Private John Corman, a member of the 517th Signal Company, who crash-landed near a grove. All aboard had ejected or ran out into battle. Corman soon found himself alone in the woods, armed only with his gun. He located a group of paratroopers fighting German soldiers who were shooting from farmhouses. After the conquest of the last farmhouse, he heard a noise from the cellar and prepared a grenade to throw inside. Reportedly, he recalled a letter from his mother that stated, quote, "Never forget that the young man you are fighting has a mother who loves him and prays for him, just as I love and pray for you." Instead of throwing the grenade, he opted for ordering a surrender in German. After a few seconds, Nazis didn't move from the cellar, but a grandmother, followed by 13 women and children. Private Corman would go on to thank his mother for saving their lives and his conscience. While fighting, the 316th Troop Carrier Group received heavy fire from German gunners. One of their squadrons began the fight with 21 planes, of which 16 were hit. One of their fully loaded planes ended up landing in Holland due to a Parapack container opening underneath the door.
It's okay.
Jumping past was too risky for the paratroopers. Therefore, they had to drive to the battle.
It's Jeep.
Another
It's
aircraft
American
crashed
made.
with no survivors. Still, the airborne troops captured and secured all of their objectives within hours. Aftermath. Operation Varsity had grave consequences, notwithstanding its success. Losses were high. The 6th Airborne Division had 1,500 members taken as prisoners of war. The 17th Airborne Division had 2,000. 56 planes were lost from the air forces. 21 transport aircraft from the 17th Airborne Division were shot down, with 59 more incurring significant damage.
My father became a rifleman guard in a Nazi prisoner camp. So what that tells me is that, as you heard, after the 17th 507 paratroopers landed, some of them, they split up. The majority of them went with Colonel Raff. My father was one of Raff's ruffians, because he became the guard. He was with the group that was with Colonel Raff, and whatever they did, that I'll have to find out more about. And when I do, I'll share it. But the aftermath, on a personal level, it would have remained a dark chapter in my father's history, and if my mother had lived longer. She died when she was 39. He was 45. He went into the war at age 18. But had she lived longer, I think it would have been a chapter that wasn't very much discussed. My father was not a drinker. Instead, it was basically my mom. But when she passed, he decided he was going to join her and decided to take the slow way out, I suppose. Like I said, when he came back from the war, I don't think he could love people. He had guilt over killing a woman, killing people. Having seen what he had seen, other people dying, friends, comrades, brothers in arms. He suffered PTSD, like many of them. Dan Bongino's own grandfather did from the Battle of the Bulge. I remember my dad being drunk and getting very upset, arguing with my brother and my grandma. And it got to a point where he grabbed his old World War II rifle and tried to shoot my brother, who was running up the stairs. Missed him by maybe an inch or so. On the wall that separates the living room to the staircase that goes upstairs in the house that I was born and raised in, back in Staten Island, there's a hole that goes through the wall. In the complete 180 opposite direction, where the den would be, is a bit of an archway covered with paneling, wood paneling my dad put up throughout the whole house. And there are 12 bullet holes above that. I don't know how many bullets are held in a standard Army-issued rifle from World War II in which he was handling. I know it's not an M4, but I counted a total of 12. That 12th one going through the wall. I was raised by the paratrooper belt. You fucked up big time, you got the belt bare-assed, grommets and all, no underwear, nothing. He wants to see cheek. He'd whoop your ass. Nobody ever got the belt more than once, including myself. Granted, I was small, but he gave me enough of a whooping with it to remind me to this day. And I'm grateful for that belt. I'm grateful to have been raised by a man who is stronger than I ever could be. But if it ever happens, and I pray to God it doesn't, I will fight just as hard, if not harder, as he did. To the death. I love you, Daddy. You are a hero. You're a ruffian.
16 bomber aircraft from the 8th Air Force were also shot down. Historians generally agree that the operation was successful, although not everyone deems it as necessary for the war effort. A supporter of the operation, General Eisenhower, called it, quote, the most successful airborne operation carried out to date. In his official summary, Major General Ridgway reported the operation as flawless at destroying defenses in a single day, which would have otherwise taken weeks. Although the mission's participants received military honors and celebration, some historians have deemed it superfluous. Historian James A. Houston has argued that, quote, had the same resources been employed on the ground, it's conceivable that the advance to the east may have been even more rapid than it was. Particular criticism has been leveled at the lack of sufficient transport aircraft and the high losses of troops. If the mission had been conducted as a night assault, the second issue might not have played a factor. Either way, the operation was accomplished and brought the Allies closer to defeating the Nazis.
I love you, Dad.